Hello, everyone. My name is Elijah Kinnear,
My name is Tommy Mulcairns.
and welcome to the first episode of Deconstructing Politics. Speaking of politics, it says in today's news that unemployment's going down, and you know that must be true because they gave two 20-somethings a radio talk show.
Just handing out jobs.
It's crazy. He walked up to me, and they were like, "Do you want a job? You want a radio talk show?" And I was like, "Yeah."
No qualifications whatsoever.
No.
No background checks either.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, first up on the agenda is Lawrence University Encampment. Tommy, you want to take us off?
Sure. So Lawrence University has set up an encampment on their president's lawn. This happened, I believe, sometime this week. And we had two people who were there and can speak to some of their experiences at Lawrence University.
Yeah.
So we're going to have them come up now. Tabo is going to come speak.
Can you imagine a protest happening at Appleton? Absolutely insane.
Crazy. Shout out to them and their SDS. They really did a great job setting this up, putting it together. I'm sure everyone in Appleton is super mad, which is how you know you're doing something right. But okay, Tabo, you were there, right? Do you want to just tell us a bit about why you were there, what was going on?
All right, yeah. So I'm originally from Appleton, right? So I just kind of went there to check things out, like in my home city while I was visiting family, and we got there and they had it set up on their president's lawn, which that's cool. Like that's kind of fire.
Very
really
interesting location.
Yeah.
On the president's lawn. That's pretty crazy.
We just had a lawn on the campus, and they were just in his backyard.
Right.
Yeah. So me and one of our other YDSA members showed up. And they were definitely a lot more aggro, I think, at that encampment than they ever were with us.
The police?
The university just in general, because they had campus safety officers posted up right next to the fence to the president's backyard, just among the students. I know that within 20 minutes they came up to us and were like, "Are you two students here? If you're not, we're gonna you need to get off or we're gonna trespass you." Which I guess is a really different experience to what we had, where there were just plenty of community members hanging out on our lawn. And I remember going up to one of the SDS members over there in Appleton and being like, "Hey, what's up? You guys need any help? I can bring you supplies and stuff." And then he told me yeah, no, for people who are bringing supplies, they're threatening to bring charges on you, and since you're not a student, they'll probably be worse for you too.
So they were trying to isolate them, basically, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, basically.
Because our big strength was that we were able to get supplies to our encampment very easily. There was no one was cutting us off, no one was doing anything, and I think that we would have lasted less than a week if they had kept food from us. But did it seem successful? Were people still bringing supplies anyway?
I'd heard that trying their best to throw things over the fence when they could, but it's definitely one of the challenges that they have there. And so even later, at first they allowed the students to stay, but then I want to say, I can't remember if it was after 5 o'clock, they were like, "Okay, even if you are a student, anyone who's on the lawn still, we're going to, campus safety workers there, it's if you stay, we're going to need to take a picture of you, a picture of your ID, and we can, we're going to trespass you and, maybe give you, academic misconduct stuff." So, very much trying to scare the students into going off of the lawn.
Well, were they complying? Because that's not much of a threat. If you're again, when we were doing our encampment, we were fully ready for the police to come. We had shields made, we had helmets, we were ready to fight them off. If some little campus worker came up to us and was like, "I need to take a picture of you," we would just mask up and refuse to comply. Was that the vibe at Lawrence, or were they all "Okay, I guess we'll go along with getting our picture taken"?
So the people who were behind the fence in the backyard, all of them obviously stayed, and there were some students who stayed on the lawn outside the fence. I think the students who did decide to leave, they like kind of just went over to the sidewalk and the terrace, which is still public property, so they were there basically, just weren't over that threshold, I guess, where the university could do that.
I was about to say, one of the funny things I saw from that, wasn't there a step stool to get over the fence there to get supplies in? I heard about that happening.
I did not see that when I was there, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the thing that happened.
I heard SDS kids talking about it. I'm just like, that's hilarious. Just get over. There was a guy blocking the entrance, I heard, and then just step stool over.
Yeah, hop over. Well, Tabo, where were they going to the bathroom? That's my big question. Because like, were they walking into the president's house and just like grabbing some food and like using his bathroom? Because I mean, that would be very cool of them.
That I have no idea about, actually. I mean, I know that we had tried to set up a porta potty and that was taken away, so I'm not sure what exactly system they're going to have. I obviously didn't see any porta potty there.
That would be such a great thing, just like going to the president's house. Cover me, guys! I'm taking a nap on his couch.
Well, I mean, because like with our encampment, we had access to Mitchell Hall, which was a university building. Could use the bathroom there. When it rained, we were able to basically take cover in there for a little bit. And then we also had Zao at night, so like we could walk to the church across the street. I mean, it sounds like when you're set up just at some dude's house, you do not have any of those. And I'm kind of amazed that they're able to keep this encampment going. Like logistically, it seems very difficult to do. But did you get a sense of their demands at all, Tabo? Could you understand what they were pushing for, or was it? It sounds kind of chaotic, to be honest with you.
Okay, so what they were big on pushing for was, I know their big goal, from what I understood when I was there, was disclose and divest from not only like Israeli companies and companies that support the genocide, but also from like fossil fuels too. So that was like another part of their demands that I know wasn't really part of our encampment.
I think it's very smart to tie different issues together, because I think we sort of did that with labor issues a little bit. Like we had the Milwaukee Area Labor Council come out and endorse what we were doing, and we had some labor folks out there. But I think very specifically to make another issue like fossil fuels a part of your demands shows that these issues are all interrelated, which as socialists is a very good approach.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a great thing for Appleton to tackle, especially because demands are going to look different from every encampment, every university, and to broaden it and turn it into a little more broad, a little more mass movement-y up in Appleton is definitely a really good idea.
So they didn't have any community support, Tabo? Because again, we had the entire Palestinian community out and by our side daily. That was a huge part of our success.
Yeah, no, it seemed like it was much more difficult for them to get that support. I know that before I had gotten there, they had gotten like support from some of the faculty who showed up to be like, hey, like what you're doing is cool. And I know like there were a few faculty that drove by to show support, but like in terms of from the community, I don't think they got like nearly the same level that we did here at UWM.
Did the students who were involved in the encampment, did they seem like they were in low spirits or high spirits?
They seemed like they were in high spirits, and I guess one thing that I guess was kind of I would say I guess maybe interesting to me is that they were still wearing, like the people in the backyard were still kind of willing to like share supplies and water with the people outside of the fence to like help them, like keep them going, because there were definitely more people outside than inside, just because of the way that things work when the university closes off access, allowing people to leave the encampment, the fenced-off area, but then not come back in.
So, I mean, like, how did that work out? Because we literally had to build our barricade, which is probably one of the coolest parts. Like, we had tables from Zao, we had, like, cardboard, like, literally everything. We built an entire barrier around this encampment. It sounds like with Lawrence, they had a barrier already there. Like, was the president's yard fenced in? How did that work?
Yeah, so the president's backyard, like, already had a fence with a gate. So they kind of just walked in the first night, from what I understand. And then once campus security got heard about that, that's when they posted up their security outside the fence, like to prevent anyone else from going in.
I mean, that seems like something you'd have to keep under wraps, right? Because like with Mitchell Lawn, there's like 100 different ways we could have approached it. If they couldn't block off all of Mitchell Lawn, it sounds like all the president would have had to have done is close the gate, and then the entire thing is off.
Yeah.
Well, that's where you get a step stool and a ladder. That's
True.
where the famous step stool. You just go over.
Just hop it.
We should have had people like getting on top of rooftops and parachuting in. I mean,
Parachuting in.
Paradropping in.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dabo. Thank you for coming and talking about your experiences. Good luck to the Lawrence students. We hope that they reach a good agreement or fight off the police, however it ends up happening.
Yeah, of course. I mean, obviously being from there, I hope like that good things happen for us too.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Dabo.
Well. Protests can happen in Appleton.
Guess so. So now we're going to move on to talk about our agreement. Eli, do you want to just give a quick summary of our agreement and then talk about
Absolutely.
some of the response from Zionists?
Yeah, so when it came to our agreement with the campus, they released a big statement that made the Zionists very mad. Within the statement was UWM acknowledgement of genocide. They cited the UN saying it was a plausible genocide in Gaza. The second one was UWM condemned scholasticide. For any that don't know, scholasticide in the case of Gaza is because 80% of schools were destroyed.
Every single university. Every single university was destroyed in Gaza. They no longer have any universities.
Yeah, schools are destroyed, so that's completely wiping out education and by extension culture. And this made Zionists very, very angry. Some of the amazing responses from Jessica McBride's article were about how many were students.
She really hit all the conspiracies, and that's why we love Jessica McBride. She just makes stuff up. I mean, it's odd. And she's a journalism teacher, but she's just out there lying, and that's so cool of her.
And that's the best thing for the show. We love crazy stuff like that. So, for example, she said, for days on end, the activists, and in parentheses, how many were students, took over a prominent section of campus long, hung rules banning people from speaking with police, labeled pigs.
To be clear, they were labeled pigs because it was a no halal, or it was a halal zone. It was a halal and a kosher zone.
Yeah, you can't have pork in there.
Yes.
What the heck? And built a makeshift fence with signs that contained anti-Jewish slogans like, from the river to the sea. One sign had October 7th crossed out. Imagine being a Jewish student having to traverse all this to enter Mitchell Hall for classes. How would you feel? Which is very funny considering a lot of those organizers were Jewish, such as Jewish Voice for Peace. Like, a lot of those organizers, a lot of the students there were Jewish.
One of the faculty who was involved in negotiations, who was giving us a lot of support and a lot of advice, ran Jewish Voices for Peace. We had a representative from most of the anti-Zionist Jewish organizations in the city. Like, they were Jewish Voices were very much a part of forming this encampment. So for her to come out and be like, imagine if you were a Jewish student, and like saying that all Jewish students are pro-Zionism is crazy.
And how would they feel walking past the encampment? I don't know. We were all like having fun. People were doing their homework. I mean, you would have heard me doing Trump impressions on a megaphone. Like, I don't know if that's really scary, but
right. There were a lot of kids flying kites, and these are Hamas children with Hamas kites. Yeah. Clearly terrifying.
Clearly funded. They gave a comically large check to us, and we spent it on kites and food and fun things.
Yeah, I remember when we had the Hamas fighters come, and they gave us a huge check, which was really cool.
I thought the weirdest part was they were wearing suits and ties too. That was
absolutely.
That's odd. But the second one is scared of security. And this is, the encampment appeared all but abandoned by police and university officials. Instead, it was guarded and patrolled by walkie-talkie carrying protester security workers who monitored the actions of police and other people who wandered through. I found them intimidating.
Jessica McBride found them intimidating. I just want to be clear that these were like 5'4" to like 5'10", like alt-left girlies, and like very much the least intimidating crowd you could possibly imagine, just like students with walkie-talkies and a vest, and that freaked her out. She was like almost screaming and crying, apparently.
Do you think she gets scared when she walks past a construction zone and sees high-vis vests?
I think so.
I think the medics were wearing helmets, but that was about it. I mean, the least scary security force you could see. I mean, Diego could lift all of us. Diego could lift all of us.
Diego's a little scary, but besides Diego, shout out to Diego.
Shout out Diego. But other than that, you're talking about college students with walkie-talkies and high-vis vests, and most of the time with the walkie-talkies, it was just Tommy and I doing mic check.
Yeah,
just to get
true.
a response.
Yep. and that apparently terrified Jessica
It's
McBride.
very
But,
terrifying.
she went on to, for some reason, tied in Biden's economy, of course. I mean, you gotta love conservatives and their brains. It's just none of it makes sense, but it's awesome. So, quote, the provost later encouraged instructors to be lenient on student due dates because they might be experiencing stress due to the war in the Middle East. It apparently failed to occur to him that the university's inaction on the encampment might have caused some of it. Furthermore, I can think of many things causing students stress. Biden's economy, for one.
Man, I wonder what's more stressful, a genocide in the Middle East or the price of eggs. I really
Yeah.
think about that one really hard.
No, it's just awesome to reply to someone who's like, I understand that watching your family members be absolutely decimated can be stressful for some. And she's like, okay, but what about Biden's economy? Like, what about inflation?
What about the price of gas? Have you thought about the price of gas? I know a kid's dying right now, but the price of gas.
Yeah. No, it's just like no consistent politics, no like consistent analysis. It's literally just like Biden bad, children Hamas, communism bad.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And we did good when Jessica McBride said, when university officials finally acted, they entered into the agreement that was so disturbing that 3 major Jewish organizations called it among the most offensive and dangerous of any university agreement reached with encampment protesters over the last 2 weeks.
Which makes me feel great about our agreement.
Yeah, I like the saying that they're like suspicious of like the leadership and faculty of the university, like basically saying, oh, they were doing chants in the meeting room with us. Like I remember Chancellor Monet saying free Palestine. It was crazy. Like,
to be clear, Chancellor Monet did not say free Palestine. He didn't even meet with us until we had the meeting with the foundation, in which he sat in, shook our hands, and did not say a word from there on out. So, like his presence there was clearly just to like placate us.
Yeah, no, there was we had to fight for these agreements, and to say that like this is horrible and the worst thing ever. It's calling out genocide, which the UN has already said. It's calling out scholasticide, which the UN has already said. Like, what are you talking about? How is this at all offensive or horrible? This is like, how do you get a source higher than the UN and the most like several major human rights groups internationally?
Yeah, and I mean, to be clear, like she called it disturbing, among the most offensive and dangerous. And what she's referring to when she says that is that the university was like, maybe stop destroying universities and stop killing children. And she's like, I'm offended. Yeah, this is disturbing.
I can't believe you said that. I can't believe you want me to stop killing kids.
Mm-hmm. But like the gist of her article and the gist of her arguments were kind of summed up with this one quote. Quote, I do not support university leadership calling for a ceasefire as they did. Practical reality, a ceasefire would allow Hamas to rebuild. It disadvantages Israel, end quote. That is such an insane thing to say. I think that the only thing that is allowing Hamas to rebuild is the fact that you keep killing people's like brothers, sisters, daughters. You're going to wind up creating more and more radicalized people. So if you want to end Hamas, the best way to do it would be to stop killing people.
Oh yeah, it just further radicalizes people when you indiscriminately slaughter them. I mean, you saw this when it came to the IRA in Ireland. I mean, if you just keep pushing hard and killing innocent people, then you're going to have this ultimate radicalizing force against you.
Yeah, people don't respond well to brutality. I mean, that was literally what sparked these encampments, right? Was that the Columbia students did the encampment, and then we saw how brutally they were treated by the police. And first of all, the next day, a ton more Columbian students were out there setting up another encampment. And also it sparked a national movement. It's like if you want to cut off something, you don't feed it by being brutal towards it.
Oh, absolutely. Fully agreed. Mm-hmm. And of course, we see the amazing responses from the Biden administration and how it's been affecting its polling. I mean, young people are all everywhere frustrated and angry because when we set up these encampments, and you would expect maybe a little more from a Democratic president. I don't usually do, but and then just ultimately just shutting down and supporting Israel.
Well, I mean, it's to the point that he is literally putting up his entire 2024 reelection. He's sacrificing it just to be out there and support Israel and to continue Netanyahu's lies that these are like dangerous, violent protests. So in an article from the New York Times, they talked about, quote, in a close election, every vote matters. But in the 2020 presidential race, there's a good argument that young voters mattered a lot and helped tip the scales for President Biden. So he very much needs the youth vote. And instead of trying to court these activists and build them as part of his coalition, he's decided to push them away by coming out and saying that they are violent, dangerous, they need to stop. And it's completely destroying any chance he has with youth voters, and that's going to matter in Wisconsin and Michigan.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we saw in 2020 how the youth vote helped win these key swing states, and it was reported on. I remember the articles from 2020 talking about how youth voters really brought this election for Biden. And now to basically just turn your back and say, oh, we don't care about you, we don't care, we're going to brutalize your protesters, we're going to shut down these encampments, and we're going to support the very thing you're protesting is absolutely insane.
And this is not just us speculating. So in another quote from that New York Times article, this year, though, things seem much less straightforward. Polling data shows that Mr. Biden's approval rating has tanked among young Americans. Polls also show that he continues to be hounded by the perception that he is too old for the job, and young activists are creating a PR nightmare for the campaign as they protest for more direct action on climate change and demand a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. Isn't it funny, though, that the New York Times reports, end quote, the New York Times reports us going out there and being like, please stop doing genocide. They're like, wow, they're creating a PR nightmare. It's like, maybe we're just outraged about genocide, and that should be the focus of the story rather than our PR effect on Biden's campaign.
It's like if in 2020 they were saying like the BLM protesters were causing a PR nightmare for Trump. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing? Why is the
Yeah.
narrative suddenly switched? Like, we're out here protesting a genocide and the brutal, horrible things that we're seeing coming out of Gaza. And the response has been, oh, you're hurting Biden. You're causing this PR disaster. It's the young people doing it. How about the administration that's sending billions to Israel? How about the administration that refuses to denounce this genocide? I think the responsibility relies there, not me sitting in my tent playing like Super Smash Brothers or something, you know?
Yeah, you mean losing to me in Super Smash
Okay,
Brothers,
yeah,
just
well,
to be clear.
yeah, that's right.
No, it's the exact same sentiment as, because if Biden loses in 2024, what they're going to do is they're going to turn around and blame young voters, and it's the same sentiment of like it's on young voters to elect Biden, not that it's on Biden to build a coalition that includes young voters and appeal to those voters. Like, at what other time in history have we been like it's the voters' job to support the president, not the president's job to appeal to voters and win an election? That's just not how politics has ever worked.
No, it's not. I mean, FDR had to build the New Deal coalition. All these presidents had to build the coalitions that actually got them elected. To say that those voters need to build the coalitions themselves, it's absolutely crazy.
So, and just for context, what we're talking about, Biden's remarks toward students, he came out in a press conference and said, quote, "So let me be clear. Peaceful protests in America, violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs. Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduation, none of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not peaceful protest. It's against the law. Dissent is essential to democracy, but dissent must never lead to disorder or to denying the rights of others so students can finish the semester and their college education," end quote.
I really love the dissent should not lead to disorder line. What do you think dissent is? Like, dissent leads to disorder because it's to disrupt and like shine a light on this issue that needs to happen. Like, that's like saying, oh, the BLM protests, dissent must not lead to disorder. Like, that was the point.
Right.
Us seeing all the protests in Minneapolis shed light on the horrible killing of George Floyd and this massive issue of police brutality in America. Like, that's the point. When you shut down a street with banners and marches, that is the point, is to make it very aware to the general populace that this issue is happening.
Right. I mean, the bus boycotts were not, that was not an orderly thing. That was not meant to like help further order. The whole point of civil disobedience is to be disobedient,
Yeah, I mean, like Bernie Sanders said in a speech on the Senate floor, it's like the sit-ins were an encampment. Like, all these things were about disorder. They're about like causing a stir that would lead to actual focus. Like, this is in the tradition of the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, and the anti-apartheid movement against South Africa. Like, what are we doing differently?
Absolutely nothing. In fact, I would say that this is some of the most well-organized student movements we've ever seen. There is a strong emphasis on being peaceful and an understanding of the PR effects on the movement of not being peaceful. So, I mean, this is probably the most orderly that civil disobedience has been. But it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what it is because they're always going to try and push it as violent. They're always going to create narratives that it's, like, hurting other people. The protesters are the ones being violent, not the police coming in and brutalizing these people. It's all just about narrative building and who controls the narrative.
Oh, absolutely. When it comes to all these encampments, who's being violent first? It's always the police cracking down and destroying these encampments. I mean, and then you see footage of like counter protesters throwing fireworks into the crowd and the police doing nothing. It's not the protesters being violent at all. It's always police and counter protesters that start the violence first. But apparently, just sitting on a lawn is violence. Like occupying a hall is violence.
Right. Well, and it's the property that they're worried about, right? right? So they're saying that when the protesters occupy property, they're doing violence. But when, like you said, counter protesters, the Zionists, like they did at UCLA, are throwing fireworks in, beating student press, beating these student protesters who are trying to remain peaceful, and the police just stand by and watch, that's not violent, because that's state violence, and they don't recognize state violence as violence, you know? But when the state inflicts violence on people to continue its power, no one bats an eye.
It's always about the monopoly of violence. I mean, and like one is clearly worse than the other. I mean, I'm not going over to. I mean, even if I was on the lawn, like punching it, you know, like really giving it what for, that'd be nowhere clears to the state endorsed violence that police have been doing to protesters. And it's all about narrative. It's all about just making us look bad and saying we're violent. When if you really looked into it, it's a bunch of students just protesting and getting cracked down on.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at what happened in Colombia. They broke one window, and all of a sudden they sent in like the entire army. They're like, we need a military response to these college students. And then they were like, a lot of these people are outside agitators. They go in there, they arrest them, and they find out that like 95% of them were actually students. But they're always carrying this narrative of it's outside agitators, it's outside agitators. It's not outside agitators. Students lead the movement, and we get support from the community, but it is absolutely not coming from some outside group.
I mean, you'll see footage online, and if you look and you find these people that are like being horrible, saying anti-Semitic things, or generally just being outside agitators, like they're always removed from the encampment. They're always removed from the protest. This is the reason why we have these horrible security teams that Jessica McBride is scared about, you know, like the big scary ones. Like this is why we have security teams. So when that happens, we remove them. Like we do like enforce that in our encampments. But you can't talk about that. We got to talk about outside agitators and how maybe some 30-something is going to come into a protest.
No, they think it's Hamas. That's why they were like, so there are these green tents that are the cheapest to buy at Walmart and cheapest to get on Amazon. So we ordered a bunch of them. And then they turn around and were like, why are they all green like that? Not because they're the cheapest, but because Hamas is funding us, and these are Hamas-created tents, which is awesome. Okay.
Like I said, they came in with suits and a big comically large check, and then that's how we bought the tents. It's so true. The Hamas came all the way here just for those tents.
Hamas isn't busy with anything else right now. They have nothing else going on. They're just chilling, waiting to distribute tents to college students.
Yeah. It's truly just all about the narrative. It's all about crushing down on these protesters. And if you ask anyone about how they felt on these encampments, it was a safe, peaceful setting. I mean, like I said, a lot of people were doing their homework. A lot of people were doing their finals. People were dancing, listening to music. We'd have events and teach-ins, daily breakfast and dinners. It was truly like a community event. It was a community space where we all felt safe and comfortable and with each other. I don't think anyone there felt unsafe. And I think if you ask any Jewish organizer that is involved in these organizations that was at the encampment, they did not feel uncomfortable.
Well, I learned more about Judaism as a religion there than I ever have before, because we had daily and weekly teach-ins from Jewish Voices for Peace, where they would come and teach us about Judaism and the history of it and give us a deeper appreciation of the culture. I think we even engaged in some Shabbat dinners. Like, we engaged in a lot of the Jewish traditions on top of a lot of Muslim traditions as well. So, I mean, it was a multicultural space that you're absolutely right, Eli. No one felt unsafe at. Like, it was the most welcoming space I've ever seen on that campus.
Yeah, you come in and you're welcomed by a sidewalk full of chalk drawings. A lot of them were drawn by the kids that were there. There's kids running and playing, having a great time. I mean, it's the narrative around it is just absolutely horrible. I mean, I think the best memories of the rest of my life were had there. Just like having fun, hanging out with people, sitting in a circle, listening to music. It's to frame it as this horrible, violent thing is just ridiculous. Yeah,
and I think, like, looking back on the encampment, the one takeaway is that it was the space for people to come and learn and stay together, but it was also a protest that was able to extract. The university did not want to work with us in negotiations, but we were able to stay there long enough to put so much pressure on them that they came out with what Jewish organizations call among the most offensive and dangerous agreement. But it was a very good agreement. Like, we got what we wanted. We're moving our focus to the foundation now. There is no way to look at this encampment and be like this was a bad thing for the people involved or for the university.
Absolutely correct. And I think that's totally true. And with that, I think that is our time talking about the news. And now we get to plug the boat tour.
River West Radio.
And River West Radio. River West Radio is doing a boat tour called Wave Chappelle. It's Waves of Change, and it's happening on May 31st at 4:30 to 7. They're going to have some raffles, some music, some food, all that fun stuff. So come on out, buy a ticket. You can find it on the River West Radio website, and we will try to be there. You might hear me telling my little jokes. I do really good impressions, I just want to say.
You do mildly good impressions.
I do good impressions. You can hear them there.